So sad. Hi, my special ones. Today I'm going to talk about African art. So I was scrolling through Instagram and I saw this chopped piece of wood and with some Ankara laid on it, and they said African art. And then I was scrolling further down and I saw this woman lying on a straw mat dripping with watermelon juice, and they wrote African art, and I lost it. See, I am sick and tired of this depiction of African art, where for it to be considered African art, it has to be rural, rustic, wooden. It has to be very dated for it to be considered African art. Because if you look at art in the West has evolved over the centuries, from the classical period to the medieval period, to the Renaissance period, to Rococo art, to Modernism, postmodernism. In between all these movements and forms of art, you've had other things like abstract art come out, Futurism, Dadaism. There are so many movements in art in the West. So I don't understand why when it comes to African art, we have to put everything in one box of bulky beads, naked people, mud huts. Why? For me, I believe these things that we describe as African art, for me, I think they should be classified as classical African art, and that we should allow African art to evolve and grow. In the film world, if a filmmaker makes a movie about poor suffering Africans, movies that are seen with a cause, usually based in the ghetto, around suffering and injustice, those movies tend to do well on the international film festival circuit, because those movies pander to what the Western world believes to be African, and we sometimes feed it. Now, don't get me wrong, there are some Africans that live in these kind of situations till date, but it's not all Africans live in mud huts with no electricity. That's one. And then two, the only role of art is not only realism. Art must not only be a realistic picture. In fact, I think that one of the most important roles of art in our society is actually aspiration, to make us aspire to better things. I'll give you an example. The Wright Brothers, who made the first airplane, were inspired by a picture drawn by Leonardo Da Vinci. Now, in the era of Leonardo Da Vinci, there was nothing like planes, but he sat down and imagined a human being sitting on a bird and flying. And when the Wright brothers saw this picture, they were inspired to make the first airplane. Cell phones that we use, that's what I'm using to record my So Says now, were inspired from the old movie Star Trek, which were made by Lucille Ball's production company. And the first man who made the first cell phone, I mean, then they had the ring-a-ling things, but the man who invented the first cell phone said he saw it in Star Trek, where somebody flipped something open and made a call, and he was like, yeah, I can make this. And he began to investigate about how to make it. Self-driving cars of today that are all the rage. Self-driving cars were first conceptualized in the movie Total Recall, and scientists later saw it and decided to think about how can we make this happen. Because I want artists and artisans alike to understand that art is usually the forerunner of development. Art precedes science and technology, because art is what lights the imagination on fire. Art is the what. And then when we see what we want to achieve, when we see the reality we want to live in, scientists begin to think about the how. So everything that we've seen in the world today is because somebody has imagined it. There's a popular saying that says you cannot feature in a future you haven't pictured. So it all starts with your imagination. You have to set it on fire. And I really want to encourage African artists to stop confusing their role with the role of historians. A historian's job is to document the past accurately, for us to go back and read or look at pictures, and for us to take lessons from. An artist must not be tied to realism or to history. An artist should allow their minds to be free, should allow their imaginations to take flight. I always ask these questions. In African art, what is science fiction? What is futurism? What is postmodernistic African art? What is 21st century African art? Because everything that is African art is always bulky beads, mud huts, women dancing naked in the village square. I feel those things are more the jobs of historians, because I'm not saying we should deny our future. But okay, but what does futuristic African art look like? Another reason why I say art should be also more aspirational is that sometimes we are the ones that put these chains on ourselves and constrain ourselves. For example, if I drew a picture of this beautiful, gorgeous castle made of only diamonds and gold, a lot of you will say it's not African art. A lot of you will say it's too beautiful, because we kind of feel that when something is too new or too refined, it is not a depiction accurately of Africa. But the reason why I'm using diamonds and gold as an example is that diamonds and golds come from Africa. All the diamonds and golds you see being on engagement rings and being flaunted in the West come from the African continent. So why can't we, who own these things, depict them in our arts? That's why I said if I drew a picture of this beautiful house made of diamond and gold and said African castle, I promise you some people would come out and question me and say, oh, this is not Africa. But these raw materials are from here. Africa has the most raw materials and minerals in the world, yet we let people take what we have and depict it as their own, while we stick to mud and sand and dirt as our own definition of ourselves. You see why I say art must be very aspirational? Because, like I said, every development in science and tech in the world, and I kid you not when I use the word every, they have been conceptualized by artists. Somebody has imagined it, and then somebody else was like, you know what, I can actually make your dreams come true. So I urge African artists to, not everybody must be in the box of realism. You know, let's explore other movements in art. Like I said, there's Futurism, there's Dadaism, Romanticism, medieval art, Renaissance art, and we also have all these eras on our continent. So let's begin to explore. Let's allow our imaginations to be free. Dream the wildest dream, because, like I also said before, art must not only be realism. In fact, for me, my favorite kind of art is the aspirational ones, the ones that make you think, how can we make this become a reality? And I really want to urge African artists and African artisans, because I am sick and tired of the definition of African art being bulky beads, mud huts, straw hats, Ankara. My problem with Ankara is such an unbreathable fabric. Has prints all over it. Most of the Ankara that we claim as African attire is not even made in Africa. Most of them are made in Holland. You know, though we have some African manufacturers making them now, but most of the original ones were imported from Holland, and we import this and it becomes African culture. You know what I mean? And I also wonder why over the years the fabric of Ankara there's no innovation being made there. Ankara is still that unstretchy, unbreathable thing. Yes, the prints on it are getting better, but what about the fabric itself? You see, that's why I say sometimes art for us is all about just the cover. Why can't somebody conceptualize a picture of an Ankara material that kind of transforms or molds into shapes and all, something like that? And if somebody draws a picture like that or makes maybe a metal work sculpture or a wooden work sculpture of something like that, you will not have scientists say, that's interesting. Let's see how we can innovate on the pre-existing fabric. So like I said, art is what comes before development. In as much as life mirrors art, in as much as art mirrors life, I feel like life mirrors art even more. It is the thrill that art blazes that life tends to follow. So that's my success for today. Have a wonderful Sunday. Don't forget to practice your empathy, and remember that empathy means what you don't want someone to do to you, don't do it to another person. Let your imagination soar. Dream the wildest, biggest, and most impossible dreams and watch them become a reality. Until next time, remember that I love you.